Hello and thank you, Professor Stick, and hello to Professor Stick's audience. Some of you may not know who I am, so a brief introduction if you will put up with it. And as this logo indicates over my shoulder, I'm Mr. Atheist. You can also just call me Jimmy. Jimmy Snow is my name, and I have a channel called Mr. Atheist where largely what I take on are fundamentalist religion and the way that fundamentalism, especially in the United States, affects people in oppressed minorities and oppressed groups. I'm in fact myself a queer creator, and I grew up in the cult called Mormonism. And that's why a lot of the stuff I focus on, the fundamentalism that I criticize, it largely is for the groups that entity has been so oppressive to, especially queer people and women. And I wanted to take this opportunity on Professor Stick's channel to get something off my chest. This seems like as good a place as any, and that is how weary I truly am with this argument of why not just live and let live? How come you've joined the Church of Anti-Mormon now? Why not just let them? Sure, you left, but why not just go on and live your life? This is the kind of criticism that a lot of us who have become creators that are critical of religion, this is the type of criticism a lot of us face. As though when you would leave this church, like you're leaving a church that you obviously know is still wonderful, even if you don't believe it anymore. So why not just leave it alone? And I want to talk a little bit about why we shouldn't leave these things alone. I want to go on a little bit of a rant here. As I said, it is no secret that I am very critical of the Mormon Church, and having read through a lot of the comments that I get on those videos, for a lot of people, it is their first time finding out that there is this other layer, this other way the church is. You know, those sweet people, they don't swear, they don't drink, and they always have such a happy smile on their face that must be authentic and true, right? There couldn't be a dark side. There couldn't be a dark side to a religion like Mormonism. It couldn't be that they did something like, for the last couple centuries, drive a lot of the anti-queer propaganda in this country. It couldn't be that they are an entity with similar financial power to the Catholic Church. How could it be that there could be that dark side? But it's also not limited to just Mormonism. If you go to my channel, while there are times I go with the extreme fundamentalists it's easy to see them for what they are, I often also go after the soft approach fundamentalists. Many of the people you will see me at odds with, sometimes in feuds with, are very pleasant looking, kind, elegant. They speak very positively. They're the kind of happy, nice person that honestly, I'm sure a lot of people look at least look at their performance. It doesn't actually speak to what it's like behind the scenes, but look at them and go, dang, they seem like they're happy. I wonder if I can be as happy as this, again, performance if I were to follow their advice. Even though so much of their advice is actually meant to be for their audience, but not advice they live themselves. We see this in conflicts of purity and how pure people had remained. But now, even though they didn't, they assure you should stay pure, and they can tell you why it would be worth it. Or we see it in channels like Girl Defined, who have this ministry where they are leaders, but they're teaching wives to be submissive and not to seek out career opportunities, despite the fact that they are very much living out a career, that is the life they have. They just call it a ministry and think that it's different. And the fact of the matter is that soft approach fundamentalism is still in practice fundamentalism. They're still teaching female submission. They're still teaching anti-queer messages. They're still making people feel guilty and filthy for doing the things their body desires to do, even those things that harm nobody else when you're all alone at night or in the morning. Or you need to just take a break from the middle of the day and squeeze one out then. I think you get what I'm saying here. This is the problem with soft approach fundamentalism, because it's still fundamentalism at its core, and the practice of it is the same. And a lot of them will use these like somewhat sly tactics of, we're going to tell you this part and say you should explore this, and as you do it with this guide, do it with this book, and this will often be the more fundamentalist type. Again, when you see Girl Defined do that, they'll often be sending you to books that have basically support things like conversion therapy, things that we know are harmful to people, things that we know are bad. But to the main charge, and I'm going to illustrate this by reading to you a vague post that was made about me and others from a Mormon who is a Mormon public figure. Technically, it's a public post. Anybody can see it, but it's on their personal page, so I'm not going to attribute who it's from, even though I think actually ethically it would be totally fine to. But I'm going to illustrate the following point by reading to you from this post. But it's going to be about why don't I just live and let live? Why not just let it all go? And here's the thing that especially Mormons, because that's going to be the main people I've interacted with from my own past, don't seem to grasp. If your church isn't true, it's evil. If your church isn't true, it's harming people. If your church isn't true, it's terrible. And just because I left religion doesn't mean I don't care about people. In fact, I am now a secular humanist. Humans are something I care very much about. But in discovering the church wasn't true, I discovered those things, that it is terrible, that it is evil, that it is a scam, that it is more interested in its own financial stability than the mental and emotional stability of its membership. I see things like the suicide epidemic in Utah and connect it to the problematic and untrue things the church has taught or is teaching now, but even more severely had taught in its past. I actually, on my channel, I created a video that is a timeline of the anti-queer sentiment that the church has been offering and has been bolstering up for the rest of the nation. Again, they are behind a lot of anti-queer propaganda for the last couple centuries. Actually, I should say century and a half, because they weren't even really around 2 centuries ago. They're like just getting to there. But I learned for myself through objective means that that church wasn't true. And when I found that out, I realized they had not only fooled me, they had fooled tons of people I loved. And then my general concern for people could not let me just sit and be silent. It's also a funny and kind of strange criticism coming from the church that sends out missionaries and is constantly trying to get their message out. And it doesn't surprise me that there is an eagerness amongst its membership to quiet the voices like mine and convince us we should just live and let live because they have a narrative they're putting out. I have discovered that that narrative isn't true and decided to take it upon myself wherever I can to counter that narrative with facts, not with just feelings and opinions. And I'm certainly never going to go to a person and say, search inwardly. Do you feel like what I'm saying is true? Because that is obviously the method they use. So onto this post, there was this interaction between me and a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, this Mormon kid. And he's closer to my age than being a child, but I think, I don't know. Anyway, we have this interaction over this story that a whistleblower is claiming up to $100 billion is essentially being held in such a way that isn't being properly taxed, or not even taxed, that the funds that should be required to go out to charitable causes and organizations basically aren't. Now, whether or not this is true, I genuinely don't know. I thought it was an interesting thing that it was getting so much attention at such early phases, and there's some information in there that is very concerning. The church doesn't have a good history of being honest and open about its books. In fact, they lost lawsuits back when Proposition 8 was a thing they were supporting, and they had to reveal that the amount of money they had used to support Proposition 8 was not actually the amount they told their members, and in fact declare that they were using tithing funds where they said they weren't. So the church does have a history of being iffy with its reporting. At the very least, some would just say flat out fraudulent. However, I had not taken the position that they for sure had committed fraud. And in fact, as people have been messaging me this story over and over again, I decided I was going to wait until more information came out. And so I engaged with this individual on my Facebook page who basically was pre-defending the church and denigrating people who essentially disagreed and kept trying to assign them to the position that they're saying the church committed fraud, where many people, including myself, were saying the church needs to be transparent. Churches should have to be totally transparent. Anywhere there is money that is getting taxpayer exemptions should have to be totally transparent. And I genuinely do believe that. What the phrase total transparency actually means we could discuss. But basically, the dollars in and dollars out, they should have to declare where those things are. Anyway, after he deleted my comments, after telling me I supported this fraud idea, and I said I actually never stated that, which was true. I never stated that. In fact, that's not my position. I think he became embarrassed that he had assigned me a position I had never claimed for myself, and he had made broad assumptions about me because he has assigned me to this camp of anti-Mormon. So he makes this vague post shortly after, and it is undoubtedly about me, perhaps others as well. I'm noticing a trend here. People who hate the church and have committed to be ideologically against it no matter what want the IRS tax fraud rumor to be true. So that is already inherently wrong. I'm not ideologically against the church no matter what. In fact, there are ideological points that I'm sure the church and I agree on. I am sure that I have things, in other words, I don't just take whatever ideological position the church states and say I'm against that. I feel the opposite. I only oppose those things which are untrue or are presented as truth despite not having good enough evidence to do so. Anyway, they want the IRS tax fraud rumor to be true. It's actually more like we've seen the corruption with religion and the Mormon church has been no exception, and we just really wouldn't be surprised to find out it's true. I don't actually care. The church is adequately not true for me. I don't need this IRS fraud thing to be true on top of that. They want every false claim about the church to be true. No, I don't. Because if every claim, and he says every false claim, if every claim made about the church is true, there's a lot of terrible things. In fact, I wish a lot of the claims you would dismiss as false claims that have been proven to be true weren't true. Like all of the abuse. Like all of the abuse sister missionaries have suffered at the hands of mission presidents. Maybe you should look into that, buddy. They want it to be a corrupt organization. I can already demonstrate it's a corrupt organization, so they can feel more justified in hating it. Again, it's this use of the word hate like we get from theists all the time. You hate God. I don't. And I don't hate Mormonism. I believed in Mormonism wholeheartedly, and I understand why people have fallen for that lie as well as other religious lies. I most wish to see people relieved of living a lie. When something as weak and withered as the Washington Post hit piece is released, the majority of those who are committed against the church blindly believe that smear campaign. So first of all, the Washington Post hit piece only reported allegations. It didn't actually make a claim that any of the allegations were true. So not only is he mischaracterizing me, he's mischaracterizing this Washington Post hit piece. That's also going to the sort of persecution complex. Everybody, the world is just so motivated to take down the Mormons. Anyway, he lists a bunch of things that don't actually matter. It doesn't matter that they aren't experts in tax policy. It doesn't matter if the evidence and documentation are missing. It doesn't matter if it's founded completely on hearsay. They want it to be true. First of all, you obviously don't know what all of those words mean. In fact, there are a lot of things. There are a lot of things that we find to be true based on hearsay because hearsay is the only evidence available. It's really funny, actually. This reads so much like the type of defenses Donald Trump gets. And I know this individual doesn't like Donald Trump, but it's funny that he would use the exact same tactics. And it's just us versus them tactics, trying to discredit the opposition. It is funny because he is largely projecting and accusing the outside of doing what he is doing. Ironically, for people who have left the faith, when someone claims the church has done wrong, they take it on faith. So, first of all, no. And I didn't take that article on faith. Also, I don't think you know what the word faith means. I mean, I know you've had to recite the definitions from both, I think it's in Mosiah and Hebrews. So you know that that's not what faith is. You're trying to mix in this religious faith and this colloquial faith. But it is funny that you are using faith as a pejorative here, because your religion is entirely dependent on taking things on faith, and yet you are critical of people allegedly doing just that, taking things on faith. Very interesting. Very interesting indeed. It's no different than politics, celebrity worship, and athletics. It isn't just that you dislike Trump or Hillary. Once you've committed against them, you wanted every rumor about them to be true. You wanted Hillary to be a murderer. You wanted Trump to be guilty of espionage. You wanted ammo against the opposing team. It's really funny that he goes with Trump to be guilty of espionage, which isn't an accusation most have made. Like, no, I don't need any rumors to be true that aren't demonstrated to be true. Like with hating Trump, which I do. I really dislike the guy. With hating Trump, I can just go with the things we verified to be true. Now, it doesn't help the large stack of allegations against him, but then again, this, in sounding like the kind of Trumpian defense, also sounds like it's a very similar defense as used by the anti-Me Too movement. It's an unavoidable reality that when people leave the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, many stay attached to the culture, news, and social atmosphere of it. Many just move on and live their life as they see fit. No, you know what, actually? No one does that. Nobody can leave that cult and just live their life as they see fit. The indoctrination is so deep and so ingrained that that's actually impossible. Now, not everybody becomes a critic of the church, but to say that they just go on and live their life, that's not how recovering from a cult works. However, many join the Church of Anti-Mormon and use their missionary zeal to do all they can do to destroy the church they once loved. I am interested in destroying the church, not because I once loved them, not because I have missionary zeal, but because they are actively harming lots of people all the time. They don't have faith that the church isn't true. They have faith that the church is corrupt. No, I don't. I don't need faith. Faith is spiritual apprehension. I don't need faith. I can demonstrate with actual facts that the church is corrupt. And so can you, bud. Read the CES letter and research the claims in there. In fact, to anybody who is wondering about the truth of the church, there's a wonderful document called the CES letter that is essentially one individual's compilation of conflicts and reasons why they can't be a member in good standing of the church because these facts conflict with their faith. And I encourage you to read and further research any of the points that you feel worthy of scrutiny. I think everybody should scrutinize any point made by anybody, frankly. They have faith it's an immoral organization. Well, once again, I actually have a timeline of the immoral acts toward queers, including conversion therapy, including shock therapy, including the secret monitoring of the Deseret Gym's locker room to try and catch queers and bring them to justice. They have faith they are doing the right thing by opposing the church in every way, and like any church, they need to have faith in something. It is real fun. It's really fun to watch this individual who is so ingrained, who is actually out trying to convert other people to this doctrine, is using the phrase faith as a pejorative. I mean, there we would agree that faith is not a good thing. You could use losing some of yours. So this was the thing I wanted to go on something of a rant about. The mischaracterization of people like myself, people like Professor Stick, people who want to fight back against actual evil in this world, and one of those forces that organizes evil, that makes good people do evil things. And the fact of the matter is, when you say, why don't you just live and let live? Part of it's because someone didn't do that for me. And then I found out I hadn't even begun to live yet. And also, as they're talking about this Church of Anti-Mormon and our missionary zeal, there's a huge difference between my presentation and yours. You're sending people door to door to give this information out, to find vulnerable people who are primed to hear your message and bring them into your cult and start taking their money. I post mine to YouTube. People come to me. People come to my videos. People hear me out when they want to. Pretty interesting distinction between us, I'd say. All right, well, thank you, Professor Stick, for letting me get that off my chest. Anyone who's interested can find my channel over at Mr. Atheist. I'm also on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Reddit at Dear Mr. Atheist. Thanks for having me. Thanks for hearing me out. With love, I'm Jimmy Snow. Mr. Atheist was not my father.